Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Blake's Books. I am Caleb, and today I am going to be doing a book review for the book Rogue Squadron by Michael Stackpole. This is the first book in the Star Wars X-Wing series in the Legends continuity. And to be honest, I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on this book because, to me, not that I did not like this book, I did enjoy it, but to me, it was kind of just one of the most take it or leave it kind of Legends books I've read so far. It was one of the most yeah, that was fine. That's really it. But I guess to get started, some things that I liked about this, really in general, I think it was just an all-around, solid book. The characters were pretty much all good. I did like Corran Horn, who is the main protagonist, who is a very prominent figure in the Legends stories post Return of the Jedi. He's a very important player in this series. He also pops up in I, Jedi, which I think is mainly about him, which is one that I have, but I have not read it yet. And I believe he also shows up in New Jedi Order, if I remember correctly. I've read the first few books in that series, and I believe he appears in those, from what I can remember. But he's a solid protagonist. I also enjoyed seeing Wedge Antilles, who is a character from the original trilogy. He's one of the few original trilogy characters who appears in this. Others like Han and Luke are mentioned, but they don't show up. It's all more rebellion. They're part of the rebellion, but kind of more rebellion higher up people appear in this, Admiral Akbar is in this a few times. And Wedge Antilles is, I believe, the leader of Rogue Squadron, so he plays a very prominent role here, and I liked him. I've never really been the most huge fan of him in other books, like the Jedi Academy books I believe he is in. And I was never, hugely into him, but he's good in this. And there are several other members of Rogue Squadron who are in here that I thought were all pretty solid. Also, the storyline, again, kind of the same deal as the characters. Nothing really stood out to me that much, but it was an enjoyable storyline. I particularly enjoyed just kind of seeing Rogue Squadron go on some different missions, do training together, and kind of building relationships between all of them. The overarching story was not as interesting to me, some of the stuff going on, but I did enjoy certain aspects of it. I think the best part of this book for me was the writing style in the space battles. I have never really been the biggest fan of the way space battles are written in Star Wars books. It's not that I don't enjoy them, it's not really anything bad to say about the space battles in the other books. But for some reason, it just never quite clicks with me. I don't know if it's because I'm just not as into the pilot stuff as I am into, the Jedi, the Sith, all that sort of thing. But it just didn't quite land for me in past books, whereas in this, I think it was written really well, and I did actually enjoy it quite a lot. And maybe it was because it was more prominent in this one, so I was kind of reading more space combat and stuff like that, and so it kind of got me more used to it. Whereas in other books, like the Thrawn trilogy, or I believe even some in New Jedi Order, whereas that's a little bit more sporadic, it doesn't show up quite as often, whereas this is basically focused all on that, so maybe that's part of why it worked for me a little more. But I did really enjoy the writing of the space combat in this, and because I was not super into it in the past, when I started really enjoying it in this book, that really stood out to me. So Michael Stackpole definitely, based on this at least, seems to be very good with writing space combat, and that is probably the biggest plus that I would give this book. As far as negatives, the only thing really is something I already basically talked about. Nothing really in Rogue Squadron stood out to me that much as particularly fantastic. It was just generally, like I said earlier, it was fine, it was okay. It was one of the most, I read it and I was just yeah, sure, that was okay. I didn't mind it. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it was just kind of in the middle, and that was kind of disappointing for me, because of how highly regarded this book is and this series is. I'm still intending to read more of the series. I'm planning to read basically every Star Wars book I can get my hands on, whenever I'm able to. So I do intend to read the entirety of this series if I get the chance. But I do really hope that it picks up later on, because this one, if I were just going based on this book, I might give the second or third book a chance, but I would be much less inclined to continue the series if it were not a Star Wars tie-in novel, because I already have that commitment to, I want to read all of them, or at least most of them. If that weren't the case, I would probably either put the series down now or put it down at like book 2 or 3 if those also didn't work for me so much. Again, not that it was bad, but it was just not really something where I'm like, I really want to continue the series, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the big negative for me with this. It's not really that anything was bad, it was just that it was very okay at best, I think. And that's really all I have to say about this. Like I said at the beginning of the review, I don't have a ton to say about this book because, you know, if you point out basically anything that happened in this, I'd be like, yeah, that was fine. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. There's nothing that stands out to me as particularly bad. There's nothing that stands out as particularly great. It's just all around, it was a decent read. It wasn't incredible, but, you know, I enjoyed it. Didn't enjoy it to the extent that I hoped I would. So that's really all I have to say about this one, I think. If I were to give it like a rating out of 10, I'd probably stick it somewhere in like the 6.5 out of 10 range, which really bums me out because I want to put it higher because of how well loved it is, and I really hoped I would enjoy this more, especially since I have not been hugely interested in the piloting and space combat and all that stuff in past Star Wars books. I was hoping this would really change that for me, and while I did enjoy it more in this book, overall it just still didn't quite work for me, and I think it's probably just the style of story this is. I think I'm mainly just more interested in the Jedi and the Sith and all of that kind of stuff, not so much more of the military side of Star Wars, I think. So I think that's probably why it didn't work so much for me. So if you're very interested in the military side of Star Wars, I think you'll probably enjoy this a lot more than I did. As it is, though, I thought it was okay, but I didn't really love it or anything. It was just kind of middle of the road for me. So I suppose that's basically all I've got for you for this review. Let me know in the comments if you have read Rogue Squadron or any other books or all of the books in the X-Wing series. Let me know down in the comments, and if you think that this book is better than I give it credit for, or if you also think it was maybe a little underwhelming. Let me know down in the comments below. And that is pretty much all I got for you today, so thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.